Hello, this is Simon Jacobs, and this is Adventures in Pop, and you are very, very welcome indeed. I've just been waiting for you, and now that you're here, we're starting. And I want to talk today about an aspect of songwriting and producing for all you songwriters and producers who do the same thing as I'm doing at home, just toiling away with your craft. It struck me the other day that you need to be able to operate in two quite different kind of mental states when you're doing songwriting and producing. And I was beginning to be very conscious of the fact that, I need to sit down in one kind of state when I'm doing the songwriting and a completely different one when I'm doing the kind of arranging and producing and putting it all together. So I just wanted to explain that because it might be the most obvious thing ever because you just do it naturally without analysing it. Or maybe it's just never occurred to you. And it hadn't really occurred to me till the other day. But I was thinking that during the songwriting process, when I come in here and I'm sitting here and I've maybe got half an idea and I'm exploring it and seeing what might go with it, and it just struck me that is a period of what I kind of call being disorganized. And I think it's really important that the songwriter in you and in me, in that moment when you're doing the creative bit, it's actually really important to be disorganized. You don't want to close the door to some ideas. You don't want to create every song in exactly the same way so that you end up, just being like a cookie cutter songwriter where you think, okay, right, well, I start with the piano and I do this and then I add this and then I add this, then I sing a bit of this. I haven't got any templates that I have kind of pre-prepared for me to use when I'm doing songwriting. Everything, I just have to start from scratch all the time, every time. And I think that's a good idea. I want that period of the songwriting to be disorganized. And by that, I mean you try things out. You don't have any time limits. You don't put restraints on yourself. You have a go. Something works, something doesn't work. The thing that doesn't work, you take it off again. The thing that does work, it excites you to do something else which you hadn't thought of until you heard the thing that does work. And on you go. But that period in your mind, that's got to be the real just, letting it all float around. It's the tire kicking stage where you're just trying stuff. You're seeing if it runs. You're trying out a melody. You're trying out some lyrics. You're trying a rhythm that goes with that rhythm, but no, not quite. No, that's not quite right. And sometimes it goes somewhere and sometimes it doesn't. So you might have one of these disorganized sessions with yourself where you sit there with all your instruments and you're having a fine old time, but actually after an hour or so, you say to yourself, I haven't really got a song, or I've got half an idea. Maybe it'll gestate for a while in my head and come out another time. Or you might be thinking, blimey, that was really productive. I've got an amazing track coming up here. And it's a time when you start getting excited and you either kind of know or you don't know that, it either is or it isn't going to go any further. Okay, and that's the disorganized period of kind of creativity. If you like, it's kind of right brain activity, although I'm not quite sure where I sit with this right brain and left brain stuff. So that might be a bit of red herring, but where the left brain is logical thinking, rational language, analysis, etc. And your right brain is creative and, experimental and intuitive and all those things. Okay, so I'm not sure where I stand with that, but irrespective, that is quite a good way of characterizing it because the songwriting stage, as I say, is the time when you're taking on board lots of new ideas and hopefully you're pushing the boundaries of what you do just a little bit every time, experimenting and feeling no risk of failure. That's really important. It's a kind of, it's your own little safe space where you're going to try stuff out And the only person who's going to judge whether it's any good is probably you. And you're not going to hurt yourself if you decide after an hour that it's basically rubbish. Okay, this is like normal life, okay? And then there's the organized brain, which you really need. Once you've made some decisions and you've got to the point where you're thinking, this is a song, it now needs to get sort of produced and arranged and mixed, and it's got to go from having just been written, is still fresh, to being a thing I can listen to again and again and play to other people. When you get into that stage, you need to close the door on all the creative stuff, in a sense, and now get really focused. And the focus is on getting it done, being really thorough, being meticulous, being really patient, going through line by line, checking the sounds, making them as good as they can be, putting them against each other, the layering, and then all the production stuff, the EQing and the compression, etc., etc. So at that point, I think you change into the other brain, and it's a bit like, I kind of picture it like, this might be a little spurious, but rather like going fishing, where you're going to spend hours and hours sitting by the banks of a river with the fishing rod, staring into space, contemplating, and you're having fine thoughts about the world and your place in it, and that time can just go on and on and on and on until suddenly there's a tug on the line, and then you go into real focus of, right, I need to land that fish. Well, I think it's rather the same with our songs. We can spend as much time as it takes in that phase of landing the song, and sometimes the song gets away, or we land it and it's rather disappointing. But then the focus comes in getting it shipshape, and really, that's where all the production, I think I've had to learn with all the production work to be very, logical, step by step, not trying to take any shortcuts, very patient in going through with all the tuning of the vocals, etc., etc. So it takes a while, and it requires a completely different mindset, where basically the writing of the song is now over, and you're into making sure that you've captured it. And this is where sometimes I get into slight panic about capturing often the early ideas I come up with really early on in the process. And I'm a bit of a fan of this idea. Maybe it's only me that's got this idea. It could be that when you're writing a song and a melody comes up in your head, sometimes it's the very first time that you hear it in your mind, or sing it out loud. That is the take that you want. That is the way to sing that melody. And I'm quite a fan of trying to capture the very first kind of iteration, because too often you take that bit of melody that's just come raw out of your head, you sing it, and then within about 2 minutes, you're changing it over and over to fit into something that is more normally you, or something that is something you recognize, more quickly. And that's a shame. So it's something that I think with technology and with our phones and everything, we can capture almost the very first time we've had that idea. And that is, I think, worth, it's priceless. I might be wrong. I can't prove this in any way, shape or form, that the first idea is the purest and maybe possibly the best, in that, when you're doing that song, that idea was the one that you really had to capture. So that's really just a long way of saying, there are these two different mindsets for any song. And I think if you skimp on either, you're not going to do yourself any favors, because you're either going to have a song where it could have been something brilliant, but you didn't give yourself the opportunity, you didn't give yourself the time, you didn't give yourself the experimental space, or you were too worried that it needed to sound a bit like this, all of which is problematic for creativity. So you could have that go wrong, or you could have the most fantastic song, and then you just kind of screw it up in the production because you're not focused on it and you're doing three other things at the same time. That's my point. It's an easy point, well made. Now look, just real quick, in a couple of weeks' time, there will be another single from me coming out. It's called Stir the Pot, and it's going to be the fourth track from my Dancey album. 3 tracks already out. Go check them out. And there's also been a bit of Goldhawk Foxes action. 2 Goldhawk Foxes singles out recently. Do go and check them out too, because they're very good. And have a lovely end of week. I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.